And we are live.
All right, fantastic. So we're gonna do something a little different today. Today I have with me 675 Dreamer or John. I'm Andy or the Pale Rider for anyone who watches my channel. So I guess obviously the first question, John, is like, since your YouTube channel says 675 Dreamer, I guess I'd assume when we're starting to talk that you had a Triumph, but that's not the case. You have a Kawasaki in the background there. So, is there any, or is the 675 Dreamer? Is that your goal to ultimately get a Triumph Daytona 675?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had so many bikes at this point, and I have owned a Daytona 675, but it was my dream bike for the longest time.
Yeah,
When I started my original YouTube channel, the Daytona was one of the first bikes that had ever seen. I think I was like 8 years old, and I was like at the beach with my family, and this guy was on one of the old school Daytonas, and he was an older dude, like, and was just cool enough to just hang out and talk to us and everything else. So ever since that point, I was like, yeah, I got to get one of those bikes. And so that the name kind of came from that, just me having like the dream to own one, which, I eventually did. And then, as things go with bikes, you get that, and then you see something else and you just move on.
yep. That's I'm in the same camp. I had one. I guess the first year they came out was at 2006, I believe. Yeah, I had a red 675, and this is when I was still doing like street riding. Years before the track days came about. So one of the things, I guess, John, you just kind of completed, your first year of racing. Um, I guess, how long did you do? Like, did you ride around on the street or the track or whatnot? Kind of just a brief background of kind of what led up to ultimately deciding to, you know, wait for the checkered flag and see how you do on the interim race.
I mean, I guess my progression was, kind of the typical progression. I'd say, I mean, I've been riding sport bikes for about 15 years now, dabble in dirt bikes too. And I, just had the humble beginnings on, just like everybody else, like I said,
Right.
you see a bike and then, you want to ride, then you go get one. And, I don't have any deep roots, and nobody in my family really rides bikes or anything like that. So, um, I was in college and just ran down to the dealership and did what you're not supposed to do and just bought a brand new bike, which coincidentally, yeah, was a 2007 Kawasaki. It was between that or the Gixxer 600, but ended up getting the Cowie. But the rest is history. Just I got that bike, started riding, and did the street thing for a long time. I live
Hmm.
in northern Florida, so we have a lot of open roads up here, a lot of back roads, a lot of twisties. I mean, it's southern Georgia pretty much where I live,
Right. Right.
and yeah, that just sort of evolved into track riding, which motivated me to start getting into watching racing too. And then after riding the track for several years on a couple different bikes, I was like, well, I'm riding and I'm getting better, but what's the goal? And for me, the goal was I want to progress and I want to develop this riding skill. I don't just want to spin laps. I want to have a purpose and I want to have a goal. And so for me, in order to develop my skills, what better way than to go racing, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that became my most recent goal, which I just recently achieved as well. But that was kind of the progression there.
Yeah, it's funny. You said a couple things that I guess one thing I would always recommend to people, like sometimes you see um, as a coach, we coach, intermediate and, novice, etc. And I swear novice probably has the highest population of like brand new, like legit, really nice bikes. But as you know, bikes, bikes go down. And I think, and it's great to take, I mean, it's wonderful to take like a 15, $20,000 bike and put it in the environment that is designed to be used for. But I certainly would recommend that people get a beater bike for the track. I mean, something that's, I mean, you can get a decent, well, I know you've been kind of searching for on your channel. You look at, your other channel, like bargain bikes and stuff. Those are perfect track bikes. Something you're not going to go, way in debt. something. I mean, mechanically, it has to be sound, obviously, but it doesn't have to look so great because you don't care what it looks like when you're getting around the track. But yeah, I see a lot of really nice bikes on the track, and it's really it almost breaks your heart sometimes when you see a really nice bike end up in the gravel pit. Um, it's yeah, that's terrible. But yeah, I kind of follow the same kind of progression in terms of like riding on the street. And I mean, been following racing for God way back when it was like Speed Channel with Dave Despain, and but we stream everything now. We got the Moto America feed, the World Superbike feed, Moto GP, and we've been to the Moto GP. We've been to like 8 Moto GPs. Typically we'll go to the sometimes we go to Road Atlanta, but it's such a pain in the ass getting over to Road Atlanta. But typically Barber is kind of my home track. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I guess one of the other things in terms of like transitioning from riding on the street to riding on the track is, well, we used to live outside of Atlanta, and I don't have to tell you what the traffic like is there. And there was a lot of times where I thought, when I used to ride into work, I was like, I'm gonna get killed on this road. And so certainly people just aren't watching. This is like years ago, and so ultimately that's how we kind of progressed to. I really wanted to kind of ride the bike more toward its design intent, and that kind of steered us toward riding on the track. And I guess it's 9 or 10 years now I've been riding on the track, and yeah, it's definitely rewarding in terms of like pushing your skills, and then like to your point, going through the different groups, and then when you start racing, that certainly um, brings it up another level as well. Yeah, real quick, one thing I did want to ask, like in terms of like your channel, like when you create your channel that you post, your track riding, kind of what is your goal for that channel? This is more of a curiosity question than really maybe a little not exactly relative to what we're talking about, but I guess why did you generate a channel?
So I have two, and so the 675 Dreamer channel is just my personal channel, just to just track my progression and to put out my track videos. Anytime I get on track, I try to get my GoPro out. It doesn't happen all the time, but I like posting up just laps because when I was learning, I mean, that's the first thing I did was just hopped on YouTube, and just started watching
Yeah.
videos. So yeah, watching other people's videos, but also watching my own videos definitely helps out my riding. So 675 Dreamer, it just mostly has just me on the track. But then I just started another channel with a buddy of mine, Florida Moto Talk. And
Hmm.
with that channel, yeah, we pretty much use our expertise in searching the deepest bowels of Facebook Marketplace to find like great deals on cheap bikes.
Yeah.
And then we share those deals, and then of course there's going to be a little bit of Moto GP and World Superbike and Moto America talk mixed in there. But the main purpose is just to share good deals so that we can get more people out there riding with good bikes, because COVID has just wrecked the used bike market to
I
to a
think it's actually
ridiculous extent.
I think it's sort of hit its peak, I guess, in terms of the use. I mean, there's some people that it's ridiculous what some people are asking, for their bikes, but I think it's sort of hit its peak, and I think some used prices, I think they're starting to stabilize back to what reality is. I mean, it's almost like for every great deal you find, it's almost like wouldn't have to look too hard to find like someone who's got a 15-year-old bike with 40,000 miles under asking over what the bike cost, MSRP. That's I think it's comical actually what some
Yeah, and
people are asking.
people are
But hey,
paying.
exactly, I guess that's true, right? If someone's going to pay
Yeah.
for that, then that's the market price, right? So that's really interesting. So
Yeah.
all right, so I guess yeah, in terms of like, I know you contacted me about the video that I'd put out that apparently and yeah, one of the things I guess maybe before I touch on that, it's like, yeah, I put my channel out for the same reason. I'm not trying to make money. A lot of times I'll run the camera for basically a couple different reasons. Maybe I'll share it with friends, like, hey, here's this session. whatever, that we're out on the track, whatever. Sometimes when you're riding with friends is really, beneficial. The other thing is really for my self improvement, so I could look, and a lot of times I'll look at my I try to, I don't know if you know, it's like when I a lot of times when I ride on the track, I try to capture the lap timer in the video frame, so that if I'm
Hmm.
going around and I see that it is, showing green where I've been, hammering on laps. And so what did I do previously in the last like 3 turns? That did I hold the gas longer to have a maybe a better line going through there, etc. So in terms of like just looking at your own video and being self-critical on what you could do better, I think it's certainly a valuable tool. I do recommend that for a lot of people. The videotape, I mean, that's a great, great instruction where you look at your laps, you look at how you're doing, and kind of be, yeah, again, be self-critical on like, I could have done this better. I should have held the gas longer. I didn't brake hard enough, etc. You can do that with your own video. What's even better is if you have someone who's like riding behind you. If like you get a friend who's riding on the track and they can follow you around, then you really see how you're riding. Um, that's that's another thing. Like with coaching, like some people they just want to follow you around to get a toe to see how you ride. But that's I can't really provide a lot of feedback because when you're riding, you can't coach from doing this all the time, looking back over your shoulder. So we can do that for a couple laps, but typically I'll come in and say like, look, I can't. I'll lead for 2 laps and I'll wave you by, and then I'll see how you're riding. So at least I can provide some feedback on how people are riding on the track. And so a camera now with sport bike track time, they don't allow can't film customers, but if you have a friend you're on the track with, I would certainly say, hey, can you mind following me for a couple laps? I want to see how I'm riding. I mean, that's the camera is so objective. It's like you may feel like you're doing something great, but when you see it on camera or someone points something out, and then you can't argue with that. So um anyway, so yeah, the
Yeah,
camera's
yeah,
great.
yeah. Yeah, and the speed too is what I find it just such a great benefit also to go back and watch it, because when you're in the moment, it feels like you're going a million miles per hour on that bike.
Right.
And and then you play the video back and you're like, man, I could have swore I was going twice as fast, but it, you can watch it, in the slower speed, like as you perceive it when you're watching it, and it's just the same thing. I mean, you can, well, I'm braking here, and then I'm accelerating here. This line was a little off, and you can look at all of these things and kind of it's easier to process it when you're watching it as opposed to trying to make those changes in the moment, at full tilt. So,
Oh, absolutely. No, I do know some people, they'll have their camera and they'll download the information or their lap timer. They'll download that information right there at the track. Like they'll maybe I know people who have brought like a PC at the track and or their laptop or whatever, and then they'll go through that. And I mean that is really that's getting into it when you start really
mhm.
dissecting every session after the session and put a plan together. That's the other thing I tell people as well. A lot of times, and my wife is, she's like she rides as well, and she has like a 3 ring binder of like all these different notes, and she's a very meticulous plan on what she's going to work on, and that should honestly be as dedicated as she is in terms of like, okay, what I do typically have a plan. Like if I'm going to go out, I need to work on turn 5. I want to carry more speed. I want to hold the gas longer going into whatever turn 1, etc. I do try to chip away at that. But the video doesn't lie, and it is a great learning tool to improve your riding. So yeah, I'm all about the cameras. So that's awesome. So like, what I guess in that video that I put together, like, what was the how is this beneficial? Because you would just this last year, this is January 2024, and in 2023, you got into racing, and so that video, how did you find that was helpful for you to kind of dip your toe in the water in terms of racing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it we're so fortunate nowadays that we have all this technology that we keep
Yeah,
talking
we
about,
are.
because like say, 15 years ago, and when you're trying to get into any sort of like niche hobby, right? It's like, well, I need to go out and I have to go find the people that do it, and then I have to get in with them, and then they
Hmm.
kind of have to kind of have to, show me how it's done. But with all this tech, I mean, we can just hop online and you can look up absolutely anything you need. And yeah, for me, I didn't. Well, now I know a lot of people that race since I've started
Yeah.
racing, but prior to that, I didn't know anybody that raced. I just knew it was something that I wanted to do. So I went to the technology and searched on YouTube, and I found your video, and it's a great video. First of all, I mean, you can see
I
just how
appreciate that.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to it many times, as you know, and you can just see how much like effort and how much time you put into it because I mean, I'm sitting here I was listening to that video and then I'm taking notes. I'm like, oh man, I didn't think about that at all, man. Like,
That's
oh, well,
great.
okay, well, that's great. And that the video was pretty much instrumental in getting me to the racetrack because, like I said, prior to that, I'm like, man, I just want to go race. Like, where do I start? And in that video, you laid it out from point A to point B. And for anybody that's thinking about getting into racing, I mean, like I said, I was in the position. Go watch the video, and that's pretty much going to answer every
Yeah,
question
that
that you have about getting into it.
well, that's awesome. Because I mean, even though other coaches I know and other even when I was a customer, I knew people who raced just because we've been doing track days for whatever 9 years or whatever, and I had plenty of people to talk to. But there was still a lot of questions and really just the whole process from soup to nuts, like how everything worked. And I thought, well, if I've read the rule book and I've watched races, even weirder races, I would go, even if I'm not planning on racing. A lot of times I will go and watch a race, even if it isn't. I mean, there could be people I know who are racing, but they're typically it's just like I just enjoy watching racing, and now participating in it. So there was a lot of questions that even having maybe more kind of background or history in terms of like local club racing, I still had questions and I still didn't know a lot of things. And even in 2022, when I got my race certification and license, there was leading up to that first weekend, there were still questions I had that I had to call people up, I knew. So I was like, if I've done kind of all this research and I have this background and I still have questions, then I thought, well, other people must have questions also, and they must, be scratching their heads. If you just check the Weir forum, people have a lot of questions on how do I do this, that, or the other thing. And it's not like the rule book is pretty clear, but it's just the nuances and the details. I thought, well, maybe it's a good idea to just put something kind of my experience together on what everyone should know about that. And and again, my goal is not to. I'm never going to make money on YouTube, but it's really to help other people out. If I could do that, like most of my videos are really just me doing track riding. There's certain things here or there, just like some of the kind of more maintenance videos, like you were mentioning, like with the technology today. Most bike maintenance, like 90 some percent of the bike maintenance, you can find a video on how to do that online. But there was
Yep.
certain videos where it was maybe 75% of the answer, and so there was a couple videos I put together because that missing 25% is the is the critical information that you need to complete this task or whatnot that you're doing. So again, I'm not going to make money, and I really don't have any interest in making money. I'm not going to pimp my channel or whatever. If people find my videos useful, great. If they think my channel sucks, doesn't bother me. So
Well, like I said, you're doing pretty good, man, in my book. If you're going racing, for those who are listening that are thinking about getting into it, you have to do the research because there is a lot that you need to know. Just like you said, I mean, with that rule book, especially if you're racing with Weira, I mean, that rule book's probably about that thick. And you have to know those
yeah, I
rules
have it here
because I mean
somewhere
you're
around it. Oh, here it is. So
yeah. So
uh,
it's one of those
as a matter of fact, I got it
it's
right here. This is
look at that.
this is
There
the
you
whole
go.
rule book. All my entries and all everything is right here. Now, like I
Yeah,
tell people, read it cover to cover. That's
read it.
it's there's a lot of stuff that you should know before you sign up and go racing.
Yeah, that and the video it puts you the video gets you to the track, but like I said, you still have to put in that work on your own because there's technical specifications that you have to be aware of. You have to know the flags. You have to know and it sounds like it's a lot, but once you read the book, I mean, it's not really hard to understand. It seems like a lot, but promise me, it's not too much to understand. But there are certain procedures that you have to follow when you crash, and there's certain things that you have to do when other people crash, and
Yep.
you know, if you don't get out of the pits quick enough and get to your grid spot, there's all sorts of things that you
Yep.
need to know, and
Hmm.
just don't skip out on the rules would be a really big piece of advice for me, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about safety, and following the rules is how we get to compete safely. So we all have to be on the same page. And
Yeah, that's for
the
sure.
last thing, yeah, and the last thing you want to do is go through all that effort and get to the track, and then you realize that you missed the section about number plates, or you forgot to safety wire your front calipers, or something small
That's
like that
right.
that takes you out of a race,
I
or your
sort of
helmet's
alluded to
not
that, that,
good
to
today.
basically get all that prep done ahead of time. I mean,
Hmm.
I probably spent at least 2 weekends, going through the entire, you know, technical requirements of what has to be wired. And some of it's just
Yep.
like, I don't know what do they mean by this? What's the oil galley plug, for example? I mean, it's a lot of, I've learned that a lot of bikes don't have those, in these modern, bikes, but, obviously the vintage bikes, they may have that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, or like for example, I know someone else. They crashed during a race, and it wasn't a big crash. It was just, I think they just low sided, got on their bike, joined the race, and they were
Yeah,
disqualified
big no
because they
no.
didn't come back
Big
in to
no no.
retech. Yeah, right. I mean, well, you see it on racing. If you watch racing, it's like, oh, someone low sides to get back on the bike, and they jump back in the race. They don't have to retech
Mhm.
in motor in any professional racing, but we're not professionals. We got, these guys got a team of people working on their bikes, and it's just, a lot of people, they're their own mechanic. We don't have a crew chief or anything like that. Right. Is there one thing that like if someone's gonna get into racing, what's maybe one of the biggest takeaways that maybe from that video, or some, it doesn't have to necessarily be something that was mentioned or something you'd like to emphasize in terms of getting into racing?
Um, I'd probably say that most people, in my opinion, they wonder about the speed, and you touched on that too, and you touched on it pretty extensively, and I really enjoyed listening to your thoughts on that too. But um, I feel like most people would wonder, how fast do I need to be, and I feel like that keeps a lot of people from getting out to racing, and you had mentioned that you probably want to be like intermediate or advanced level before you get into it, and
Hmm.
I agree with that too, because I spend a lot of time online just doing the YouTube thing, and it seems like there's a school of thought now that people were saying, if you get a bike, then you can go race, right? Like if you pass the school, you get a bike, you can go race, right? It's kind of the what what the train of thought is now. Is that what you're hearing as well?
I mean, it's kind of interesting. This is something I really didn't touch on. I mean, I sort of touched on like some organizations, they will just, you pass the test, will get a certification. I mean, it
Yeah.
could be your second day on the bike. Now I sort of alluded to a little bit, like we've actually turned people down from getting a race certification because we've been riding on the track. They would literally be a hazard to not only other racers, but I mean, they gets you can get seriously hurt, on the track. Obviously, I mean, if there's a huge speed disparity between riders, that is not a safe situation. Now, obviously, experienced riders know how to get around slower riders, but and speed is like, you don't have to be setting lap records at any track. I mean, there's certainly people that race just to have fun, but expect to get lapped though. I mean, that's the thing. And if a bike is blowing by you, if some, like, it's certainly a lot of classes, it's experts and novi, riding around. Um, Now I've never been lapped, but I've come close on a couple races where it's like I just wasn't feeling it. But when people, you watch some people's videos who are really experts, and they are riding, they will blow. I mean, this is a race. This is not a track day. The rules are definitely different. I mean, they people could blow by you within fractions of an inch, and so that's you. if you get like all freaked out about that, then bad things are going to happen. So if your lap times are in that range where you could potentially be lapped, you better be ready for it. And again, so that's why, like, in advance, if you ride in advance, that happens. I mean, you you really do get used to it, because there's some people who are freaking rolling in advance. I remember, years ago, and I think it's 2018, 2019, when I got promoted to advanced. It's like my first day in advance was a barber, and it was for whatever reason, Moto America, sometimes they'll have like a tire test at Barber in the spring. Well, for whatever reason, they didn't have it, so they sort of lumped it into um, that track day. So there was at least probably 20 Moto America riders on the track, and this is my first day in advance. Man, I got smoked so bad, and some of the passes, I mean, were certainly close, but I mean, some of them were pretty damn amazing. I mean, I was just like 14,
Hmm.
15, 16, going around the last big right hand turn right before pit in at Barber. I'm going around there, and I see the white line, and I think Matthew Skoltz passed me. His knee must have been tearing up a trench in the grass, because he passed me. Basically, his tires were on the white line, and I was like, "Holy smokes, man! That was, I mean, it was impressive." So anyway, in racing, and this is just a track day, but in racing, people are basically trying to stay ahead of whoever's behind them, or trying to catch up to someone, and that happens. So that's if people's lap times are in that range, there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing wrong with being slow. I'll be the first to admit I am not the fastest rider on the track. I'll say that to anyone. I don't care, but be prepared that you may get past, and it may be damn close. And so just mentally, kind of, you may want to predict that, or anticipate that, is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, that's
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I mean, I agree with that too. If you're new getting into racing, I mean, you definitely want to be comfortable on your bike for one, and for two, you absolutely have to be comfortable getting past close and fast. For
mm-hmm,
your first while you're like your first couple races, you'll be a provisional novice, and they make you wear just a bright shirt so that everybody knows that you're the new guy, and they're supposed to give you some space for the passes. But I'll be the first one to tell you, when I was wearing that shirt, nobody cared. Nobody cared. No one cared. And I just had to just kind of learn and just stick my line and deal with it because
right.
like I said, everybody's running their pace. And if you're going to be okay being passed like that, I mean, you have to be comfortable on the track and you have to be comfortable with your bike. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the speed will come, but like I said, I mean, if like, I just agree with you, like intermediate, expert, and then just be comfortable getting buzzed because the fast guys, they're gonna blow your doors off, and
That's
they're
right.
not gonna look back at all. And if they lap you, they're gonna do it again, and they're not gonna feel
Right.
bad about it. And
Yeah, and you may
like I
see
said,
you may
and
see some dudes. You may see some dudes who are professional, like, riders, at like a local club race. And believe me, these guys, it's like, it's they've obviously, this is their profession. They've been honing these skills for years. They know how. I mean, they're gonna smoke you or I, and it's just gonna be like, well, you basically just hold your line and try not to get too wigged out about it, and just say, well, there goes so and so. Look at that. I don't understand how he's taking his turn so fast, but that's him, not
Mhm.
me.
Yeah, just be smooth, be predictable, and just don't panic because I mean, when a bike runs up on you like that, going to startle you. I mean, bikes are loud, they're
Right.
fast, and guys that are running that pace, I mean, that the bike is going to be on you like that.
Yeah,
So
for
just don't
sure.
let it startle you, and just have in your mind, that it's coming. It's coming. Just run
That's
your
right. Just
race,
do your
run your
best you
line. But
can.
yeah, yeah,
Hold
do
your
your
line.
best,
That's the
and
right. Do your best. Yeah. Is there
yeah.
anything that was like? What do you think is the biggest thing that, like, wasn't in that video? Let's just say that, or maybe it was mentioned or downplayed, that you think people should be aware of.
Mm, like I said, I mean, the video was great, and I think you pretty much covered everything. Like I said, it got me to the track. Maybe I just add So watching the video, it got me there, and I had a really good idea of what to expect. But there's still
Okay.
going to be just things that will happen over the weekend that you just can't prepare for. Whether that be like changing track conditions, which I had to deal with. Like my first
Yeah.
race weekend, it was rain, so I don't think
Right.
that was discussed in the video. But with racing, it's it's a small community of people that do it, but everybody's so open. And the night before my first race, it was rain in the forecast. I've never been on rain tires or owned rain tires, and I
Hmm.
hadn't been to the track either. This was at Roebling Road, up near Savannah, Georgia.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Fast.
I
That's a
hadn't even been on the
fast
track.
track.
Yeah, very fast track. And so, I'm nervous with my notes from the video, and just I got up like that morning. So we got there that Friday night, and we camped out. We were going to stay all weekend, and I got up really early that Saturday because I was just wired, and I was probably up like 4 a.m. just walking around the pits, and there was a guy that was up, getting his bike all prepped up, and I just went and talked to him. He said 4 a.m. in the morning, like we were the only guys that were up, and I just went and talked to him. I'm like, man, like this is my first race, and we got rain coming and this and that. And the guy, his name was John, and anybody that races at Weir Southeast, I won't drop his full name, but you probably know him. He rides a very loud bike, is what I'll say. That John on a loud bike, and
Okay.
this guy he's just so knowledgeable beyond any. Like I could not have ran into a better person before my first race. And I just picked his brain about the track and about the lines, and then he gave me advice on rain tires and what I should get and the pressures and kind of how to. He told me how like the practice sessions would run and just where I needed to be and how I needed to be set up, and just little things like that I'd say. Just things that we can't really touch on in a video because it's things that we can't
Sure.
predict, right? Just those little things. But don't be afraid, just to go talk to somebody, just like I did, because I guarantee you, no matter who you're pitted next to, like at any race, at least here in the Southeast where I race, I mean, if you have a question or you don't understand something, just go ask the guy next to you, and I guarantee you, like they'll be open to help you out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there's certainly people at the track or most track days and even racing, everyone's there with a little slightly different purpose. But I mean, I don't know of anyone who's turned me down for any kind of help or questions I've had.
Yeah,
Um, that's the only thing I would kind of, kind of maybe alter that a little bit is like when, for me personally, like when if it's like, let's say I'm race 5 and race 3 is wrapping up. Okay, so now this is kind of like my time where I'm just going mentally going through did I do everything on the bike? The heaters and whatever, the warmers are on, the pressures are right, I got gas in the tank. I just kind of just chill out a little bit. For me, don't freaking bother me at that time. And like some people said, I have come up and it's like, look, I'll see you after the race. I'm just really just trying to focus on what I have to do in the next 10 minutes. Like it's like if you need something from the toolbox, just go grab it and I'll help you out after I get done this race. So that's just me. Now people have different approaches to that. Some people are just walking around, they're watching race 4 and they're already having first call for their race and they're like, oh, I guess I got to go get ready. But uh, me personally, I need that kind of alone time just to kind of just chill out, make sure everything I'm as prepared as I'm going to be. And then when third call comes, I'm like, well, it is what it is. We're heading out. So
yeah,
that's just me. So in terms of like race requirements, like what was kind of like the kind of some of the surprises like in terms of the race requirements or technical requirements or kind of the financial obligations that you discovered when you got into racing?
I mean, as far as the technical requirements, all of them,
Yeah, yeah,
all
right.
of them. Yeah, I've learned how to safety wire a bike from from end to end, pretty much.
Yeah, drill
Um,
some learn how many drill bits you go through on trying to get those nuts and bolts drilled. So
yeah, that, and like I said, the like pre-drilled bolts. I had no idea those existed.
oh, they're I still don't have them, but I was like, boy, why didn't I buy these?
Yeah, that but yeah, that would be, a really big one, just the technical requirements, and that too can probably keep a lot of people from racing, because if you just look at the list, it seems like a lot. But what I
Hmm.
did was I just took a big poster board pretty much, and then I just wrote an entire to-do list, and I did that several months before the race. And then I just
Oh,
worked my way
great.
down the list.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because you're from 0 to race ready. It's in your first race, there's no way that that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be a process getting that bike ready and getting it within all the technical specs. So I just made a whole list, and then I went and just through the bike, just piece by piece, and said, okay, calipers safety wired, rear brake safety wired, all my oil drain safety wired, and did all that, and moved over to the coolant because you can't run like regular coolant, so easy one
Hmm.
swap that out with water. And then there's things that you have to look at each technical requirement for the class that you run into. I run in BNC Super Stock, and when I bought my bike, like for example, it had the Brembo Master Cylinder on it, which you can't
Yes.
run that in Super Stock.
Which I don't
So, like I
understand
said,
why, but yeah, I'm aware of
yeah,
that requirement also. Yes.
yeah. So I had to rip that off, for example. But just small things like that, just to get my bike within spec, within the rules, and that's all in the rule book. And like I said, it's going to seem like a lot, especially your first time. But once you get the bike prepped, it's prepped. Then you just have to look it over, make sure all your wiring, all your fluids, and everything are good. There's no leaks, and then you're pretty much good for the next race. Like once it's prepped,
Right.
it's prepped. Then you're just maintaining it beyond that point.
That's true. That's that. You put all that work in. It's a big sort of a commitment to do all that work, but then you're sort of set. You know what the requirements are. I guess a couple things that
Hmm.
I didn't mention, in the video, but certainly learned after fact, or people told me, is like really like take the belly pan off the night before you're going to go through tech, because obviously they need that
Hmm.
removed so they can tech your bike. But so again, that's another thing that you don't want to be doing. It's like, oh, I did go you go to tech, and it's like, oh, you need to take your belly pan off, so that's just a waste of time. You got to go back and then go back through tech, etc. So typically the night before, take the belly pan off, with make sure you keep all the fasteners, somewhere where you can find them in a minute. Go through tech. The other thing with the kickstand, you're not allowed to have a side stand on a bike, and so taking the side stand off is no big deal. But there's typically a fault for electronically that goes to the ECU, that you have to short that out so that it thinks that the kickstand is always up, and that's
Hmm.
another thing I don't think a lot of people really recognize. That's actually why I did put a video together about that, to just put a jumper in, so that
Hmm.
on whatever race day, I basically short the signal, and then I and typically, especially for coaching, the kickstand is fantastic because you're getting off the bike. You don't want to have it leaned against a wall. Sometimes there's not a wall where you can lean it against. So I put the kickstand back on when I'm coaching and reconnect that. So because for me, I would probably, and I know some people, they just short circuit it and then they go route riding, with the kickstand down. That's what I would do. So I always have to put that fault back in, so it functions as normal, so to speak.
Yeah, that one, and then the like the helmet one. And as for like as prepared as I was, I missed like that 5 year deal, because so the helmet,
That's right.
the manufacture date, yeah, on the helmet has to be within 5 years. And like luckily I had just got a helmet a couple years ago, so it just
Hmm.
barely made the time frame, but I somehow overlooked that, and I really would have been stuck if I hadn't have bought a newer
Or you
helmet.
borrow a helmet, you make an announcement. It's like, anyone have a size whatever,
Yeah, man.
helmet. Yeah, if you can find the other thing,
But I
if you can
lucked
find the
out.
date code on your helmet and know where it is,
Hmm.
then when you go through tech and show them it's right here, again, that's just going to save you time. You're going to get back to your pit faster. If you know where that code is, and every helmet is different. So ask me where it is for brand X helmet. So
Yeah,
that's cool.
and don't think that they're not gonna check too, because we're a
Oh
tech and
yeah,
don't play, and they're gonna check. Don't think you're gonna skirt by on any of this stuff, because you're not.
that's
So
right. Yeah.
it's safety first, and they're not skimping on safety. So just just go by the book and make sure you're
Yeah, I
ready.
mean, my opinion, if your bike isn't ready, then don't go racing. And Well, I think you
Mhm.
sort of touched on this also, like with the weather. Like if you don't have rain tires and it's piss and rain at a slick track, I wouldn't go out racing. I mean, I do have reins, but like it's really a personal decision when it comes time to, like, even if you've paid for racing and suddenly the skies open up and it's it's third call and you got slicks on, you know, is it really worth it? I mean, there probably gonna be three people on the
Yeah.
track, but I mean, at that point, if you're on slicks in the rain, you're probably just doing parade laps. Is it really, are the points really worth it? To me, I'd probably say, you know what, it's if I have another race, I'll put reins on. I have another race in the afternoon, then I'll be good to go for that. But every time that it's basically time for you to actually take the bike off the stand and head out. It's a personal decision whether you're feeling it or not. So it's only again, the if you lose, well, you've already spent the money if you've entered a race, um, and throwing what, 100 200 bucks away or whatever. I guarantee that would be cheaper than even the most minor crash. I mean, you have to replace a rear set. That's probably going to be a couple $100. So
Yeah, and when that Roebling round that I mentioned where it rained, so I ended up getting set up with wets, got good to go,
okay,
made the first practice session, which was full wet, and like I said, had never been on track, so I needed these practice sessions.
yeah,
Get
sure,
out on track. I usually run my 10 advisor, which has the pin lock, but I'm not running that in the rain, right? So I put on my
right.
backup clear, which did not have the pin lock. So I get out there and the thing fogged up. It fogged up immediately. So I have some pretty sweet pictures from the trackside guy, me putting around Roebling with a visor that's just fully gassed over. Couldn't see a
Yep.
thing, got nothing out of the practice sessions, and then it still ended up going racing.
Oh,
But
that's
just
it.
like I
I
said,
mean,
it's things like that, you can't
that's exactly like
you
that
just have to go
first
do it.
first race at Tally last year. You know, it was rain. I had the clear visor on, but I didn't do the zip tie trick. And so we came around, we're like gridding up, and for whatever reason, they're like holding us there forever. And my visor's fogging up and whatever. And I'm trying to clear it, and then finally the green flag drops, and it's still fogging up. So literally the first lap, I'm like dicking around, putting the visor up and down, trying to clear it
Yep.
off. And I finally got the vent open that actually started clearing it up. But by that time, I was like literally like dead last. But I just started
Mhm.
hammering, and I actually ended up winning the race. So that was actually in my
Nice.
class, I should say. I think I finished like third or fourth overall. But that was actually a really rewarding race because to come from basically dead last. I mean, your guys are like so far gone. I was like, man. So then it's just like, well, I'm just gonna put into work, and you never know what's gonna happen. Just
Mhm.
put in, hammer away on the laps, and next thing I knew, these guys are coming toward me, and I was like, oh, let me see if I can catch them, and it's like, let me see if I can pass them. So it was really rewarding, race.